All right, good morning, good morning, good morning. It's Thursday, February the 9th, and I want to welcome each and every one of you back to another amazing session. So, John and Jenny haven't yet joined, but they will after, no doubt, I'm finished with my little spiel here. I want to first mention that, again, we are approaching 12,000 people in our group. So that's awesome. And thank you very much. And anyone who's not part of our group, please feel free to join. I say anyone who's not part of our group because these videos are posted on public forum. You may be coming to us from outside of the group. What's more, you may not be familiar with what we do, but we are a group of professionals who are here to explore real estate and real estate law. Please feel free to join us. We would love to have you as long as you are a professional and belong to a board. As regards to today, one thing that I always say, our forum is private, but our sessions are public. Anything that is said today is being recorded and will go out on public forum. So please be aware of that fact. Last, I am going to just take a quick look through here. Do we have John or Jenny? I was informed that they don't use Zoom normally, and so they are going to be getting on. Just bear with me. Because if I'm going to make an introduction to them, it kind of helps that they're here. Bear with me. Give her a second, guys. All right. Well, I'm going to wait till they come in to make the introduction. In the interim, I was planning on taking an extra 2 or 3 minutes anyways, and just talking about what the law is on this subject before we turn to John, and I'll make the introduction to John shortly. The fact is that title insurance is a growing problem in Ontario, and many of us professionals are asked continually, what is the recourse? What happens where 2 innocent parties are defrauded by a fraudster? What happens if someone's home is sold out from under them? What happens to the original party? What happens to the person who paid money for the property? I'm going to only talk about the common law as it pertains to this and the law on this subject. And then from that point, I will turn it over to John when he comes in, who can speak about what practically is done, because title insurance is quite frankly the answer. The law, as it pertains to this subject, is something called deferred indefeasibility. And I don't know how many of you remember that from law school or from your OREA courses or Humber or whatever it is that they're doing these days. But the law of deferred indefeasibility states that where someone has gone ahead and had their home sold out from under them, upon application to the court will actually return all of course it turns on the facts, but just in a normal panoply and the normal course of things, the court will go ahead and reinstate the ownership of the original owner, leaving, of course, the buyer having paid money without title. And of course, it is title, it is that money that is then what the buyer then seeks. And that buyer usually gets that money through title insurance. There is a little hitch that I'm just going to mention. Sorry, Dustin, is that John? Is it, I don't know, John, are you using Dustin's account? Okay, well, you'll tell me if you are. I don't see John yet. Okay. There is a little hitch that I want to mention, which is something called double deferred indefeasibility. And double deferred indefeasibility is what happens when a fraudster goes ahead, sells a property to someone, and that party unknowingly sells the property to someone else. At that point, it is a done deal. The law doesn't chase it through successive sales. Double deferred indefeasibility means in Ontario that if someone who unknowingly partook in a fraud and purchased someone else's property sells to another party, then that's where the chain ends. And at that point, the original owner is out the property, and they themselves would then have to rely on title insurance. And again, not everyone has title insurance, but everyone has title insurance if in fact they are, oh, hold on a second. I am waiting and others said, hold on, Jenny and I are, sorry, John just wrote me, 1 second. I'm going to, hold on a minute, please. Sorry, guys. I'm just going to, John has just written me an email about having trouble getting in. So let me just send an invite. Sorry, guys. Let's try that. I've just resent him the invite because he's having trouble getting in. So just 1 minute, please. Said hers says September 6th. I won't let her in. All right. I'm not sure why, but anyways, I've resent and I'll resend it to Jenny as well. Sorry, guys. Just 1 second. We're having a bit of a technical glitch today. There we go. Okay. They should be coming in any second. So that's what the common law is. Title insurance is the assurance and is the insurance that basically covers this eventuality. That's the reason we're having John. With permission, I'm going to introduce John while he's not here. He can listen to this afterwards. I'm just going to make sure this isn't him. 1 second, please. That was, in fact, John, and he's just trying to find his way into the Zoom session. So, guys, please bear with us. Sometimes we have technical issues. Today is one of those days. Let's see. All right. Well, let me at least explain who John is, just in an effort to save time so he can kind of launch right into it. So John is the leader of the title division for retail and commercial policies at Chicago Title. John, so just so you're aware, Chicago Title is one of the largest title insurers in North America. I don't believe it's the largest in Canada, but relative to its peers from a North American perspective, it's actually very large, and it's certainly large in Canada. They have deep experience with dealing with title fraud. In fact, they are the people who have found themselves on the news over the course of several weeks. I believe it was their investigators who were contributing to the discussion and explaining to people what they can do to actually guard against title fraud. He's an invaluable resource, and it is my hope that he can enlighten us as to how title insurance does it and ways we can protect ourselves. So just waiting. Jenny, I think, has joined the meeting. Jenny, are you there? Let me see. I am sorry, guys. Just, you have to bear with me. We have a perfect record of no technical issues so far, but I guess today's the day. Hold on, please.
No problem. It happens all the time.
I will call John, and I'm just going to get him on the phone, and I'm going to walk him through it. Sorry, hold on, please. Okay, he's coming in. We did it. We got the link established. Hold tight. Here we go. Sorry about that, guys. An adventure for a Thursday morning. Hold on. There, hold on. Please use this link. Jenny is having her own technical difficulties, but we're almost there. John, are you there? Let's see. Okay, no. Hold on. Sorry, I'm sincerely sorry about this, guys. Just 1 minute. It's too bad because it's a good get, and I really want to hear what John has to say. Hold on, where are we? Sorry. Oh, geez. All right. All right. Hold on 1 second. Just 1 minute. 1 more minute, John. Just a minute. I'm sorry about this. All right. I am sending to you and Jenny. Here we go. Here's the link. I've just sent you a new email. Use that, please. And I'm going to get it over to Jenny. And I've done my introduction. Okay. Please. I'm going to stay on the phone with you while you're doing it. And okay, no problem. All right, and you should see it, hopefully. Perfect. All right, yeah, there you go. All right. All right, perfect. All right, we have John in the room. Hi, John, how are you?
I am great now that I'm here.
Terrific. I'm sorry about that.
No
You
worries,
know
no.
what? In fairness, you guys were trying with me yesterday to test out the link in advance, and I said, no, we never have any problems. So everyone, this was totally on me. I do apologize.
All good. As long as we got
John,
to
I
the-
hope you don't mind. I have actually spoken to the group in the 10 minutes that we've had just about the legal concepts that underlie title insurance, that underlie this particular concept of title fraud. And I have introduced you. And usually you're here and you can hear me wax effusive about how amazing you are in your organization, to be sure. But as it turns out, because I've already made that introduction, you'll have to watch it on video. So I'm going to turn it right over to you. Of course, everyone here is a professional. Everyone here is a lawyer or a realtor or a mortgage broker. And everyone here is desirous of understanding what we can do to protect ourselves and our clients vis-a-vis title fraud, of which, of course, title insurance plays a seminal part. So without further ado, because there's been a bit of ado, I leave it to you.
Okay.
And by the way, Jenny, I believe I gave Connie authorization, and I'll find Jenny the moment she joins and I'll add her. In the meantime, you may have to go without your notes. Oh, here's Jenny.
I'm here, yeah.
Perfect. I've made her a co-host as well, so she can share screen.
Good. Okay. Well, technology is not regularly my friend, but today it was really interesting, and we'll see whether I can get this up. I did this for a group of mortgage brokers, so this a version of this presentation a month or so ago, and someone wasn't muted on the call and basically talked through the entire presentation. They were trying to reach him to safely stop talking. So this is already going to go much better, I think. So in any event, as mentioned, I'm John Ryder, Senior Vice President, Chicago Title. I am here today to talk about fraud prevention. And what we're talking about today is identity fraud or fraud for profit. We're not talking about income fraud, which obviously impacts mortgage insurers and brokers and lenders in a completely different way. This is out and out fraud where the money is being stolen and never recovered. I mean, on occasion we can recover because sometimes criminals are stupid, but by and large, never recovered. So Jenny, next slide. So my job today is to scare the hell out of you. And I want to do that because I get scared by this issue, and I have had many, many sleepless nights in the last 3 years trying to figure out how we get ahead of the fraudsters and how we stop this, or at least bring it to a trickle, because these fraudsters are smart. They have 24/7 to sit around trying to figure out how to get ahead of us, because it is incredibly lucrative for them. On average, a mortgage fraud gets them about $850 to $1 million. These vendor frauds are sometimes getting them as much as $2.5 million. But we have had significantly larger frauds, claims than that, and payouts. So it is a scary issue, and it's the reason that it hasn't come to the forefront until recently is, first of all, that consumers haven't been speaking about it. But it's also because the title industry has been covering all of the losses. So, Jenny, next slide. But we can't continue to do that. So one other message I want to leave with you today is that ID is garbage. Fraudsters are creating amazing ID that it's virtually impossible sometimes to figure out whether it's real or not. It's even tough for the police to figure it out. And I'm saying to people, there is no such thing as valid ID anymore. Now, it doesn't mean we shouldn't check ID, because it is still one part of the solution to this. But when I say check ID, we really need to make sure we're checking ID. And that's at all levels. That's at the agent level, at the broker level, at the lawyer level. And everyone should educate themselves as to what looking at an ID properly is. There's also an ability to call the ministry in Ontario to check to make sure that the driver's license number, for example, is a valid number. They won't let you see the photo or any other details. But each driver's license, for example, has indicia on it. And we have a cheat sheet for licenses across the country that we can provide to you if you need, that tells you what to look for. For example, there's a black line on the bottom of everyone's driver's license. And that black line is not a line. It's actually your name repeated over and over again. So that's an easy way to look at the license, because if it doesn't say John Ryder on the bottom of it, it's not a valid driver's license for me. So driver's licenses and ID are a problem. We're seeing passports being faked, citizenship cards being faked, driver's licenses being faked. But what is important is not only to check the ID, but to ask for an additional piece of ID. We're finding that now, if you ask for 2 pieces of government issued ID and a third piece, say a credit card or a bank card, that's throwing the fraudsters off, because they're only prepared to provide 2. So when you ask for 3, they're like, oh, what? Sorry, you want more ID? And it'll often make them run for the door. So, so it's important. But the reason I'm saying that ID is garbage is every time I pick this up, it will not let me in unless it recognizes my face. That's just to use my phone. Why in the world are we allowed to do, why can I buy a $5 million, a $10 million house with 2 pieces of plastic that are easily faked? In 2023, it's crazy with the amount of technology that exists to think that that is what we're relying on. And it can't be relied on anymore. So Jenny, next slide. So I want to tell you a little bit about title insurance, but I know many of you already know basically how it works, but I know this is a diverse group. So I just wanted to quickly run through some of it, because title insurance is really the only current solution to protecting you and your clients from fraud. We're trying to implement more ID and multi-factor ID verification to provide protection to all of us. But right now, without title insurance, you are often exposed to huge costs and or loss of your property interest. So it's a faster, it allows deals to be closed faster. It's a better option because it provides more protection than the traditional way of doing a title, real estate transaction. And it's cheaper because it's a one-time fee. I always say it's the cheapest and best insurance you ever buy in your life, because you're buying the most expensive thing that you will ever buy in your life. And it's a one-time fee for that. Now, of course, my internet is unstable, so this will make things even more interesting. So for people who aren't aware, I mean, some of the common claims that we get are water tax arrears. Those are the most common by number. They're not the largest because they tend to be, 700 here, 3,000 there, 1,500 there. We cover encroachments. So if you buy a property and the garage is 1 foot on your neighbor's property, they didn't mind when it was the old owner, but now suddenly they don't like the looks of you as the new owner and they say, your garage is 1 foot on my property, get it off. We'll pay to move the garage, or we may make an arrangement with them to leave it there, or we'll fix the problem, basically, is what I'm saying. Get claims for orders to comply to municipal zoning, and most expensively, we're dealing with mortgage frauds and vendor impersonations right now. Jenny, next. So title insurance is not property insurance. And sorry, it's hard for me to see this. So just bear with me for 1 sec till I change the view so I can see everything at once. So it's not property insurance. It doesn't cover wear and tear on the home. It doesn't cover engineering. It doesn't cover architectural issues, except under very limited circumstances for those. It doesn't cover fences, boundary walls, fallen trees. It doesn't cover lost checks or errors in wiring and redirection. Sorry, yeah, it doesn't. And it does not cover broken septic systems or moving interest costs for delays in closing. Any next slide? So I wanted to play for you right now.
We own an average
Sorry. Go ahead, Jenny.
House in Toronto.
Derek and Stephanie are still coming to grips with the past year.
It's not just financial trauma, it's emotional trauma, and it never leaves you.
CBC News has agreed not to use their real names because they're victims of identity theft. The couple moved overseas for work, and in 2021, new tenants rented out their Toronto house. Months later, Stephanie logged on to her online banking and noticed their mortgage info had vanished. The bank told them the mortgage was closed. A title search confirmed the home had been sold.
The moment we found out, it's just cold chills run through your body, and you can't help but feel an overwhelming sense of emotion.
They later learned the tenants, with alleged ties to organized crime, used fake IDs to rent their home. Others posed as Stephanie and Derek using forged ID, seemingly enough to fool everyone along the way.
I think that's what scares you most. You think, well, if the bank fails, the real estate board will catch it. Or if the real estate board fails, the lawyer who signs off on the house sale will catch it. So many educated people, it just passes by.
People from all different...
Yeah, so I mean, this video goes on a little bit longer, but you can look it up online if you like, and many of you may have already seen it. But imagine being these homeowners and the stress as they talk about that they feel in finding out that their home has been sold. And you know what the first question they asked us was when they were calling? And they repeatedly asked this sort of as we talked through their issues on it. They said to us every time on every issue, was it our lawyer that did something wrong here? And then after that, they would say, but is it the agent? Is it who has done something wrong here? How is it possible that my house could be stolen without my approval? So they immediately were looking to all of you folks, in particular the lawyers, to say, how is it that this is possible? So without title insurance, it's not just those folks who are going to suffer. It's all of you that are going to be looked at to try and come up with answers and money to solve this problem. And we as an industry cannot continue to bear all of the burden of this. In our company's history, since the 60s to 2019, basically, and we could find record of 2, there might have been a couple more, but 2 frauds. We've had close to 100 frauds since 2019 in our company, and we're one of 4 companies. We represent just over 20% of the market. And so imagine how many there are across the industry. Most of these are mortgage frauds, but there are 2 types of frauds happening right now. Mortgage frauds where a fake mortgage is being put on someone's home, And the second one are vendor frauds, where someone is actually selling a property out from under the true owners. In this instance, because we know this instance quite well, not only was the home sold, but it was renovated by the new owners. So when they went back in to try and determine what was going on, they said, well, where's our furniture? And this is not, because they were getting information from their property manager. This isn't my house. But it was because it had been renovated. So it's a real mess. So these people are stressed. But you know who's really stressed without title insurance? The new purchaser. Because the new purchaser without title insurance gets zero. And not only that, they may well have an obligation still, because contractually they've agreed with that lender to borrow the 1.5 million bucks to buy the place. So they're still on the hook to the lender, even though they don't have a mortgage, they've got a contractual obligation. So they are really in a bind. And while most deals in Ontario are title insured, not everyone is. And across the country, it's very sort of different percentages of deals that get insured. Another important point to remember is that sometimes your clients will say, well, I don't want title insurance for me. Yeah, if the lender wants it, that's fine. Then we've had claims where the owner will come back to us after and say, well, there's a title insurance policy on this. And we say, it's a lender policy. You did not buy the owner's policy. So if there's any situations where you're not strongly encouraging and getting in writing, quite frankly, from the owners that they don't want to take the policy, you could be liable as well. So big issue. Now, there is one instance actually where Derek and Stephanie could still lose title to their home. And that's deferred indefeasibility is the legal concept. But what would happen is Derek and Stephanie, they get their house sold by their tenants. Those tenants, say they were doing the reno just to flip it, they sell it to a third party, an innocent third party. That third party takes title to the property, and Derek and Stephanie are left with nothing without title insurance. So it's a huge mess that even with title insurance, trust me, because Derek and Stephanie, when they did this interview, they knew that they had title insurance and that their costs would be covered, because we're going to cover all of the expenses, because it's not cheap to figure out who owns what and to actually get title transferred back to them. And we will be covering all of their costs in that scenario. And as I say, in this instance, another title insurer will be covering all the costs of the purchaser.
Can I add to that, John? Can I just add to that? Can I just add to this?
This is Connie Bird, our AVP of sales at Chicago.
So I spoke with Derek, and one of the concerns that Derek had, and I'll give you a quick scenario. They bought the house for $600,000. The house sold for $1.7 million. A title insurance policy has a 200% inflationary component to it. So that $600,000 becomes $1.2 million. The house sold for $1.7 million. Derek says, where's the other $500,000 going to come from if I'm on the hook? He says, this is where he's saying, did my lawyer do something wrong? And today, Chicago Title has, it's called the increased policy amount endorsement. And he asked if he could buy it today. And it's like, well, no, your house caught fire. You can't buy fire insurance now. But he wanted to make sure that when he does get his home reinstated, that he's got this cap, this inflationary cap removed from his title insurance policy. So John, back to you.
Yeah, so it is an opportunity to protect people, because the values of real estate have gone up exponentially in the last 10, 15 years. And so, yeah, they bought this house at a price that they would have gotten back 2 times. So they would have gotten back 1.2 million. But if the place is worth 2.2, they lose $1 million. Now, no title company offered that coverage when they bought the policy, but we are offering it now to people who can come back to us and buy that coverage. It's called IPA, increased policy amount. Actually, a sales opportunity for all of you, especially now when the market is a bit slower, to go to all of your family members who might have bought their house 10, 15 years ago and don't have title insurance, and go back in your files. If you still have contacts where people didn't buy it, or didn't, it was before you were offering it, and make sure that they have title insurance and that they have title insurance for the proper value, as we've just set out for the increased policy amount. There's still a lot of people exposed out there, especially seniors, people who've owned their house for years or decades. I was talking to a fellow the other day at one of the accounting firms who said, I bought my house 17 years ago. Now, he did have title insurance, but he didn't know about the increased policy amount. So he's blowing in the wind a bit there.
John, if I may add
go
to
ahead.
that for a second, a competitor of yours that shall not be named has recently sent out letters to all of the lawyers, basically giving them templates to send out to their clients, one of 6 different templates, depending on what type of firm you have, specifically because this is such a growing business amongst previous clientele.
Yep, that's great. So Connie, we should be doing that too.
That was implied, but I didn't say that part.
So, and these fraudsters are everywhere, and they're incredibly smart, as I said. So, you know, we've had fraudsters where it's, look, I can't meet at your office, but can you meet me at my house and sign these documents up? And this is usually a mortgage fraud. And we had one where the person sitting there waiting to sign the owner up, they come screeching into their driveway, jump into the car. Oh my God, I'm so sorry to keep you waiting. Here, let's just sign them right on the back of the trunk here so that you don't, I don't keep you any longer. I'm really sorry. Sign the documents, signer drives off, and the person doesn't go in the house because they don't own it. They get back in their car and they drive away. Same thing happened in a condo deal where person who's waiting to get signed is sitting in the lobby. Woman comes in, oh my God, I'm so sorry to keep you waiting. Let me sign it right here so I can get you going. Same thing, puts a big mortgage on someone's condo, off she goes. So, so you really have to be diligent. And if it doesn't smell right, stop and just think about it and try and figure out what you can do to try and avoid getting involved in a fraud. Because again, even if title insurance is covering it, you are going to get dragged into the investigation because 99.9% of every profession, brokers, agents, lawyers, clerks, are good, honest, hardworking people. But it's that 1 or 0.1% of the fraudsters are often coming from these industries. So we've had frauds from law clerks, lawyers, agents, brokers, and then sometimes just no professional involved at all. It's just true criminals. And it's primarily, we're being told by the police, organized crime activity. But what they often do is they'll hire a front person. So we showed the ID in that video, the fake ID. Those people weren't just front people. Sure, they're part of the fraud and they're criminals, but they're not getting the big money. They're being paid $10,000, $15,000 to pretend to be Derek and Stephanie, and then they disappear. So even when you catch those people, if they're not willing to talk because they don't want to be killed by the organized crime, presumably, then it's much harder to get at them. But it's organized crime that's doing all this. So Jenny, next slide, please. So Connie's already covered the IPA, but again, just please talk to your clients. There's real risk for them, and this increased policy and amount endorsement is huge value add to them, and we're happy to help. So if you want to have any clients who are interested, call in and we'll help place that order right away. Next slide, Jenny, sorry. So what are we doing as at Chicago Title? And we're doing it partly through the Mortgage and Title Insurance Industry Association of Canada, MTAC, but primarily we're doing it on our own to try and lobby to improve ID authentication. So we've retained the services of Campbell Strategies, which is a lobbying company, to help us. And we're going to the Attorney General, to Department of Finance, because we want the government to be putting money into the budget to fight crime. We need more money in our police forces. Now, Toronto Police Force and some of the other GTA ones have been amazing, but they're underfunded and they're actually losing people out of their fraud squads. And there needs to be more money, and there needs to be more money for them to communicate with each other. Fraudsters will commit frauds in downtown Toronto or in Toronto, and they go down streets. They'll hit like 123 Maple Street, 234 Maple Street, 345 Maple Street, and put fake mortgages on multiple properties because they'll know, oh, this is a neighborhood where clearly the lights are out and people are in Florida for 3 or 4 months. Boom, boom, boom. Put mortgages on those properties and off they go. Talking to the, as I say, Attorney General, we've been talking to the Land Titles Office, to FISRA. We're trying to cover all sort of agencies. And in my perfect world, you see, okay, let me step back. What's happening right now is because of this increased risk, I think all title companies now are trying to do a more robust ID verification right before closing, because we have to do the analysis and then we say, okay, this is too risky a deal. Either we won't give fraud coverage at all, or if we're going to give it, the parties here, either the vendors to the sale or the homeowner who's borrowing money for a mortgage, they must go through a multi-factor ID verification process. It costs $25. It takes 6 minutes to do it. And then the company gets a pass or fail or a pass with conditions that they have to look at. But it then verifies exactly who the parties are. It actually is going to help everybody in the industry once this becomes the norm, because then it doesn't take away the responsibility for you to know your client, but you will know by sending them to a third-party multi-factor ID company that right out of the gates, they will verify who they are. So you're weeding out the fraudsters right at the beginning. In a perfect world, you know, either the lawyer, the agent, or the broker, somebody at the initial stage, application stage, we'll call it, you would say, okay, as part of this deal, fill out this application and go online and pay $25 per person and do this IDV. Then send your application in and we'll start processing it. And if that could happen, then fraud would go away basically overnight. And as I say, we've got to do better than 2 pieces of plastic. I can't order a pizza. I can't get it in an Uber without giving a PIN number, but I can use 2 pieces of plastic. It doesn't make sense. Bottom line is we are lobbying these governments, agencies, talking to them, trying to get a simple and easy process for all of us to protect us all. Again, as I say, title insurance is trying to stay in this game, although 2 companies have already said that they won't do private lender transactions over $500,000. Be honest, First Canadian Title and we are still in that game, and we'll do those deals, but we are asking a lot more questions. And when it's happening right now, just as the deal is closing, it's incredibly frustrating for everybody. Our poor staff gets screamed at constantly. Jenny's on the line. She could tell you stories to the point where I've told them, you do not have to take abuse or people swearing at you. Just ask them to call back when they are a little more calm and can get this done. But it's because everyone's afraid of fraud right now. So everyone's worried, right? So if someone says call in or go on this website and do it, people aren't used to it yet. But once we get it part of the process and people are saying, like all the professionals are saying, you got to do this, then it'll just become the norm and people will make it part of the process and it'll flow more simply. So we'll get there, but it's just an adjustment period. So Jenny, next slide. Someone asked whether title insurance can be registered as a lien on title. That doesn't really help because, first of all, someone also had been asking about putting a mortgage on title. Will that stop them? Well, no, because fraudsters will just discharge the mortgage. If you put a fake mortgage on, they'll just discharge it and off they'll go. Now we ask, you know, has any activity happened on the property in 6 months? Some of these fraudsters, they take time to do these frauds. So you never know how long they're going to have to do it. Sorry. So the other thing we can ask your help in is in being aware is if you become aware that there's clearly a fraud going on, the idea is so patently obvious to be fake, call us or call the police, or we can put you in touch with the police. We would now have 2 different law firms call us up, and we've connected them with the police, and they've done sting operations where they'll come in, sign up the documents. As they leave the office, cops come in. The first one, the cops arrested them a block away. And not only was did they get the guys, man and woman who were involved in this one, they had ID for 30 other people in the car. There were 30 other frauds that this group was planning on, and one of the ringleaders of the fraud group apparently was in the car. So please, if you think it's a fraud or if it smells weird, at the very least, ask us to do an ID verification right up front, but get the police involved because they can be really helpful. Jenny, next, please. So tips to help prevent fraud. Have you acted for this borrower before? And does it seem strange? We get situations where it's, I'm a lawyer in Brampton, the client lives in Oshawa, they're buying a property in Muskoka, and the lender they're dealing with is in Oakville. We're like, what is going on here? And why is no one clued into the fact that there's something strange here? Now, sometimes there's a story that can be told that makes sense, but most of the times it's because they're trying to get people who don't know each other so they can pull the wool over everybody's eyes. If you haven't acted for the borrower before, I strongly recommend you do a multi-factor IDV on them right up front to make sure they are who they say they are. So that's for the borrower or for the vendor in a real estate transaction. Get 2 pieces of government issued ID, as I said, plus an additional piece of ID. For those who are pulling the credit bureaus, look at the credit bureau and follow up on any discrepancies in the application. Because the problem we've got too is that now the fraudsters are figuring out how to create fake profiles with the credit bureau companies. So you can't even just rely on ID and credit bureau checks, but do check them to make sure, because often there are discrepancies. When you're checking the 2 pieces of government issued ID, look at the photos. Is it the same photo? Well, that's not possible. You can't have a driver's license photo and a passport photo be the same. Is the person wearing a hat? Are they wearing glasses? Are they smiling in their passport photo? And then, you know, on the passports, there's things down below where the names have to match the name of the person. Same thing on driver's licenses. Take that extra 3 minutes and look at them and say, is there anything weird here? Account for how the money is being used. I mean, the obvious easy ones are, hey, please send this money to the gold exchange of the Cayman Islands. And when I was a practicing lawyer, I had that situation once where there was a client trying to avoid a divorce situation, but I said, no, thank you, no way. I'm not putting my license to practice on the line for your fight with your partner. But be aware of that. Is there anything strange about how the money is being delivered? Indicate if the home is not occupied or is tenanted, because again, that's where a lot of this is happening, all these frauds. Not always, but often. Make sure parties to the transaction are licensed in their profession. I know a lot of you have great relationships between your various professions, but we've seen a number of frauds where we look into it and it's like, yeah, this, I'll use broker in this example, in different professions. Yeah, this person hasn't been licensed for 5 years. In fact, their license was revoked. So know who you're dealing with. As I said, does the transaction make sense? People are all over the place. Does that make sense? Be leery of rush deals and last minute lawyer changes. We're seeing a number of frauds where emails are being hacked. And so you get an email, oh, sorry, it wasn't Royal Bank. Sorry, I gave you the wrong number. Send this money to TD and here's the new transit number for that. And in the US, we're even starting to see, there's been at least one instance where they've hacked voicemail. So they'll hack and make it sound like they're your voice. I mean, if you phone me right now and I don't answer the phone, you get my voice on, hi, this is John Ryder from Chicago Title Insurance Company. They know how I sound, and there's technology now that can then have me call you and say, oh, mistake, TD, not Royal Bank. So be careful with that too, and make sure your technology is hack proof. There's technology out there that you can buy to protect yourself from that. Get a copy of the borrower's cell phone bill. And number. I can't tell you how important this one is. The police and our own private investigator says It's the number one way we are catching the fraudsters, because they can get through the ID, they can sometimes get through the credit check, but the cell phones often trip them up. You know, it's a brand new phone you bought 2 days ago. Why? It's a burner phone. Why is John Ryder suddenly calling wherever, pick a country that I wouldn't be associated with, 25 times in the last month? Does it make sense? And then that's one of the searches actually in the multi-factor ID. So you don't necessarily have to, and you wouldn't know just by looking at the cell phone bill, but it will be good evidence for you to give to the title company or to the multi-factor company. Trust your gut. You know, you're all professionals, you've done deals, you can feel it if it's not right. And sometimes it's fine, but ask questions. And as I say, you don't want to put your license to practice on the line over these things. And you don't personally want to get caught up in these. I've talked to lawyers who are in tears on the phone saying, I've been practicing for 35 years and now I'm caught up in this. My reputation is destroyed. The Law Society is calling me. We've had one lawyer who had 12 mortgage frauds in, I think, about a 6-month period. You know, it's devastating to people's careers. And last of all, use our ID verification service. We can do it separate from the transaction if you're doing, say, a non-real estate deal. But please tell us for sure if it's tied to a piece of property so we can note that. But as I said, $25 for each person and 6 minutes to do it, and you can sleep at night. Next, Jenny, please. More red flags. Neither lawyer has acted for the borrowers before in a real estate transaction. The house is not owner occupied. No mortgage on title. Why is that? Is there a power of attorney being used, and who drafted it and who gave it? How does the private lender underwrite and appraise? There's no doubt that there's been a huge uptick in these since the stress tests were imposed by OSFI and deals started flowing from financial institutions to private lenders. This doesn't mean that private lenders are bad. It just means their underwriting standards are significantly different. And as a result, the fraudsters are driving trucks through some of them. And so you need to be careful. And as I say, I'm not going to tell you exactly what to do. You need to meet the requirements of your own practice, your own profession. But I would be using definitely ID verification multi-factor on every private lender transaction. And I would probably be using it on many vendor transactions where there's any indication of tenants or people who go away for long periods of time, and even broader. And as I say, I think ultimately every single real estate transaction is going to have this on it because it only makes sense in 2023. Next, please, Jenny. As I have just said, the ultimate tool is our ID verification service. There are other services in the market, but ours is the best. And as I say, the earlier you can order it in the transaction, the less stress it's going to be for you, for your clients, for everybody. And as I was saying earlier, in the perfect world, it's done right at the outset, but it would only be done once as well. So if it's done by the agent, say, and then a mortgage broker gets involved, and then a lender, and then the lawyer and the title company, we'd all rely on the same search through these companies. They'll just give you an ID number, and then we can each go in and say, you know, ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, that's John Ryder. Okay, let's go. I think that might be it. Jenny, is there one more slide? Yeah, so I just wanted to thank you so much for your time, for listening. I wasn't able to get most of the questions as I was going through because I'm looking at the slides and I'm looking at the screen. So I don't know if there's any questions now or if we have time, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely, John. John, I'm going to take prerogative for 1 second and ask you the first question, if you don't mind. Just because you should always answer the question from the person who screwed you up technically at the beginning of a process, the way these things work. John, is there a role for the Law Society in this? It strikes me that while professions are negligent in selecting ID, banks are not. Very simple. mandate through the Law Society that monies have to go to the party who's named on title, and if not, they have an professional obligation to alert the purchaser's title insurance.
Yeah, I think there is an obligation by the Law Society. I'm a member of the Law Society. I pay my dues. I would like them to be much stronger on what is required. But it's an obligation of FISRA, of RICO, of the Land Titles Office, of everyone. Like, we all are in this together. Because as I say, it's only to protect your own profession. Because if you don't do it, if the $0 that's become $200 million in our profession becomes 400, 800, $1.3 billion. I know that's not doubling each time, but the title insurance industry can't afford it on a one-time premium. The average premium for a residential real estate transaction in Canada is $500. We can't be covering billions of dollars of these frauds when we're only charging $500. And that's why 2 of the companies have already pulled out of the coverage. So if all 4 had to, and this is not a threat, we are definitely staying in it and we're trying to stay in it. But if all 4 companies fall out, consumers are going to be slaughtered, and they're going to be looking to all of you to fix this problem. They're going to be, and they're not just going to be looking to fix it. They're going to be looking for money from you. So we're in this together, folks. Please talk to your regulators. Please use multi-factor ID verification, and please make sure everyone has title insurance on their deal. Obviously, I would love it to be Chicago title, but most importantly, to make sure they have title insurance. And if you have friends in other provinces, I don't know how broad this group is, but let them know, get title insurance. Because even though the frauds are mainly in GTA and Vancouver right now, we're seeing them now in Alberta, Quebec. The fraudsters are going to move. Anyway, sorry, Mark.
No problem. Thank you for that, John. Okay, guys, under your Zoom tabs, there's a thing called reactions, which has your ability to raise your hand. Anyone who wants to ask a question, raise your hand. I'll call your name. Then you can unmute yourself and ask John your question. So you just go to reactions, and then you click on raise hand if you have a question. Please feel free. And first person who raises gets to ask John a question. Oh, there we go. All right. Kervi, please go ahead, unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hi, John. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I'm a real
You're
estate
welcome.
agent representing a buyer. We recently saw a house over the weekend, which was 72 days on market, and the owner doesn't live in the country.
Mhm.
So what can I do to just make sure as a buyer's agent that it's a valid transaction, just to make sure the owner is the person who actually owns the house? Like, I understand going to your warehouse, checking on the title, but if I don't know the seller in person, how can I make sure my buyer is covered?
Well, it's ID verification. Even someone in another country, it might be a little more complicated because I'm not sure every foreign piece of ID can be run through these platforms. But and it's even if they can't do it in the ID verification, you need to be looking at it. The lawyers need to be looking at the ID. It's still problematic because, you know, we've had a $3.5 million claim in BC, a mortgage claim, where they had a valid Alberta driver's license with the fraudster's face and the other person's identity on it. So none of it is perfect, but it's the multi-factor ID that's probably going to catch them out. And we know that there's been tons of fraudsters who've just taken off. When you say,
Yes.
you know, they run through it and they fail this verification, they're like, oh, no, yeah, sorry, I didn't want this loan anyway. I have to go to Florida for 2 months. I'll do it when I get back. They just disappear. But what they also do is they shop. So if they've got one lawyer or broker agent, whoever that is onto them, they
Yes.
go to somebody else. They keep working you until they find one who's vulnerable. So
Okay.
be careful. But yeah, so it's the ID verification, and it's also you looking at it and verifying it. Connie, is there anything else that I'm missing?
No,
Nope.
no, John, it's, you know, it's going to be dependent on the lawyer acting for the vendor. And,
Yes.
you know, when the transaction, you know, the deal goes down, if the identity hasn't been authenticated, it'll be a requirement. There's substantial money that's going back to that vendor. We're going to want the vendor authenticated, and some vendors don't want to cooperate, but they want the deal closed. We got to authenticate their identities.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. So I'll be looking for all the possible red flags.
Exactly. Ivar?
All right.
Ready?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ivar, then Eliza, and then we'll have time for one last question after that. So 3 last ones, and then we'll wrap up. Make our
Morning,
time
thank you.
count.
This is great. I'm not sure if you're the right person to ask, but I've been using this app called FinTracker app, which is supposed to check if an ID is valid or not. How solid is that? Is that something that you recommend doing, or is it just not really valuable?
I mean, these steps are all valuable, but I mean, it's not multi-factor enough, quite frankly. But I mean, I don't know that one specifically, so I shouldn't really speak directly to it. But unless it's checking bank accounts, ID, like the biometrics with the ID, so they take a photo of yourself and then photos of your ID so they can compare it. Cell phones and credit check, then it's not enough.
Okay,
Sorry,
it does do a photo. You have to do a photo, and then I think it checks. I guess it checks in the system if the ID is valid or not. But yeah,
something that only checks ID is not enough.
yeah, okay.
Because as I just said, this case in BC, it was a valid piece of ID issued by the government. It was real ID, but it was still fake. Sorry, Connie.
Yeah, most of the fraudulent ID that we see, we can't tell that it's fraudulent until you go into a deeper MTO search through police service. That's where they can tell an issue date's off, or there's something off on the driver's license. But when we run it through the biometric services that we have, here's a picture of Connie Bird. Here's a picture of Kelly Priest's driver's license with Connie Bird's picture on it. It can't tell. It can't tell that the license is been defrauded.
Yeah, so it's not perfect. So I think Eliza was next. Thanks, Connie.
Yes, John. Thank you so much. And thank you, Mark, for organizing. This is amazing. My question, I'm a real estate agent, and my question is, if someone wants to buy the increased policy amount endorsement, where can they go and buy it?
Call Chicago Title. I don't have the number right handy, but I don't know if you can put it, or Jenny put it in the chat box for people, and or we can provide it after the facts.
So even if they have a title insurance, insurance that was bought from another company back like 20 years when they buy the house, they can still buy that? Okay,
yep.
Perfect.
We'll sell
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay, you're very welcome.
Great, thank you.
Nihal?
Snell, you're up. Last one. I don't think anyone can hear you, Snehal. You might have a volume issue. Give you 1 more minute to try to settle that. Yes, now I'm sorry. We're gonna have to pass on it, and it's 11 o'clock. John, allow me, you guys, just to wrap up for a second, because John wasn't here for the introduction. So I'm just going to say one quick word. I personally use Chicago Title for my deals in my firm. This isn't an endorsement of Chicago Title over another title insurance company. Feel free to use who you will. I will, however, tell you that when it comes to questions vis-a-vis identification or anything else, I have found Chicago Title. I found the title insurers to be a huge resource. Being able to call up Chicago Title's back, again, please substitute whatever your title insurance company is. I'm not trying to endorse here, but being able to call Chicago Title and ask them questions and get substantive answers is one of the real powerhouses and functions that lawyers now bring to the table. Please make sure that you know your title insurance rep, that you are in close with them. If you're a new lawyer, consider forming that type of relationship so that when these questions arise, you have someone in your corner with substance that can back it up with money. And I've been very, very grateful for my relationship with Chicago Title over the years. And I want to thank you, John. I know that this is an outcome of that, and I'm very, very grateful for your time, even though maybe took us 10 minutes to get on board.
All good.
Very, very grateful for the opportunity. We had 83 people at its height, and we will be posting this on the forums, which will get a couple of hundred people who usually see this within 24 hours. We're all very grateful. One thing I would mention is if someone from your team can go over the chat dialogue, there are a lot of emails here of people who are looking to get the sheet that was referenced. So if someone can just go through that, I can even submit the chat dialogue to you just so you have a record of everyone's email. And if in fact we can get that out to them, that would be appreciated.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you again. And thank you to everyone who attended. Again, apologies at the beginning. Blame that totally on me. That was me, square and simple. And for the record, Chicago Title did ask to prep this in advance and I said no. So totally on me. All right, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you to all. Let's get this done and we will get this posted.
Thanks so much. Appreciate y'all, everybody's time. Take care.